Hi, and welcome to another edition of Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry DeSilva. Well, we not too long ago had a couple of gentlemen who, one has been a regular on our show, George Castle, and they had a marvelous book that they talked about called Champions. And one of the folks that was in that fine book, again, that has a marvelous inspirational comeback story to talk about is going to be the guest that we're going to have join us today, who has written his own book that it's already in multiple printings over the years. Ed Hearn. Now you might say, I know that name. Well, Ed was a catcher on the 1986 New York Mets World Championship team. Backed up Gary Carter, and also spent a little bit of time with the Kansas City Royals after coming up through the Philadelphia Phillies organization. And in 1986, well, Ed Hearn fulfilled a childhood dream of being on those World Championship Met team. The following year, got traded to the Royals in what turned out to be an infamous trade at the time, and thought, well, okay, he's going to be a starting catcher with the Royals for the next 8 to 10 years. And then shoulder injury took over, as well as other more debilitating, life-threatening injuries, which we'll talk a little bit with Ed about. The book, Conquering Life's Curves, Baseball Battles and Beyond, Ed Hearn with Gene Frenette. And we welcome to Studio 411 Ed Hearn. Ed, thanks for being on the program.
Yeah, my pleasure, Larry.
Now tell me, again, your life is, again, I just was just totally breathtaken by what I read in the book. Your story is way beyond baseball. I'm sure it's nothing that I haven't or other people haven't already said to you. Again, to be at the top of your game and with a bright future ahead, and then only to lose it to health and other major health situations in your life. You don't seem, from reading the book, that you have any bitterness. As a matter of fact, you've kind of put positive spins throughout your life, and you've really made just a marvelous example of your life. I'm sure that wasn't easy for you.
No, it really wasn't. I mean, it was challenging, but in the final analysis, you choose how you handle life situations, and ultimately, I found that doing what I did after I got sick and lost my career was actually more fulfilling than playing Major League Baseball. So it's been somebody called it the penthouse to the outhouse and back, and it has been that way. Absolutely,
absolutely. And again, to stress, the book is more than just a sports autobiography. In my opinion, you can quote me, it's a story about faith, survival, inspiration, and so much more. Talk about those 20-some years ago. Talk about how you and your co-author, Gene, got together to put this book together. Because obviously at that point, you were still going through a significant amount of health issues.
Yes, I had just... I had lost my career at baseball, and then began to have the major health issues that I was faced with, and I had just started doing some speaking, and I think part of the reason for writing the book was some well-known speakers, Zig Ziglar to name one of them, said to me, what's the name of your book? And I'm like, I haven't written any book. And he goes, oh my goodness, what do you mean you haven't written a book? And so that kind of prompted me a little bit. And then as I began to contemplate actually the writing of the book, our son was about 2 years old at the time. And with my health, the way it had turned out, I didn't know whether I was going to be here when he was 16, 17, 18 years old. So it made sense to me, gosh, I can put this down on paper. I can tell him stories about my life. I can leave him life lessons that I learned along the way. And even if I don't make it with all the stuff's going on, at least I'll have passed that down to him.
Absolutely, yeah. Your answer reminds me a little bit about something I read recently about the well-known cultural icon, I guess, Steve Jobs. He contacted Walter Isaacson, who's a well-known author in his own right, and then he said to him, Isaacson said, why are you calling me to ask me to do a book? You're so private and so almost like just really a whiz bang when it came to all the things he invented, like almost like a modern day Ben Franklin. And he gave somewhat similar answer. He goes, you know what? I wasn't always around for my kids. I want them to know about what their old man was about. So believe me, it's the same thing. And of course, he passed of cancer after a long battle. But again, I get what you're saying. I have to ask on a personal note. Years ago, I read a book by Mr. Ziegler. I'm talking about 30 years ago. I actually sent him a letter to show you how I was moved. And then my hopes were crushed when I received the letter back. Address unknown. So that's my Zig Ziglar story. So tell me a little bit about him, just since you brought him up. Marvelous man. Loved his readings, his work.
Yes, fabulous guy who had a tremendous impact on just countless people. I got to know him kind of late in his life, and we kind of connected, I believe. He was a man who was broke at age 50. And then all of a sudden just turned it around, and then began, realizing that he had found success, but that he wanted to make a difference in other people's lives. And that's what got him into the speaking. And, he is just, he had a tremendous impact on my life as well.
Yeah.
I met him here in Kansas City one time when he was speaking, and I asked him if he had anybody to have lunch with, and he said he didn't. And so we went and had lunch at a local restaurant during one of the talks that he was involved with. And it was just amazing to listen to the man. He just, with his experiences, he just was overflowing with nuggets about life. And so I thoroughly enjoyed it. And you don't get that opportunity very often to meet a man like that, and to sit there at his feet, so to speak, and hear him share about his journey.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, for that, I'm in awe of you because, as I said, his one book, and I wish I could remember which one it was, but I mean, it would just knocked me out. And I wrote him a letter. Again, I wish I still had a copy of the letter. And I was like crushed. I'm like, oh my goodness, this man, at the time, maybe I needed a little guidance or a little kind of ideas of where to go with things. And I just thought he was a great person. So obviously you knew him certainly better than I ever did. You grew up in Fort Pierce, Florida. Now you're living in what, Kansas, I believe?
The suburb of Kansas City, yes, sir.
Yeah, there you go. Big Royals fan. Of course, I'm sure you and your family a few years back, after a long drought, relished in the good fortunes that the Royals finally had.
It was very nice for the community and this city. Kansas City is very much a small market team, and so they've struggled in between their two championships to have a quality team. And as a player, I don't think I realized how much impact that a winning team had on the community as far as their attitude. It was just amazing how people seemed happier just because the Royals were winning. And I thought that was very interesting. Personally, I don't know that I would say I'm a fan. I keep up with the Royals a little bit, as I do the Mets as well. But that was a part of my life that I don't look back to very often. And so I guess since I played the game, I don't get caught up in the fan part of it.
Right.
My wife would has often said, "How come you don't want to go to the games or whatever?" Especially that back in when the Royals first made it to postseason. I neglect to get us tickets for they were in the playoff game where to get in the real stuff. And my wife was just devastated that I didn't get her tickets. And so I said, I don't really care that much.
Yeah.
Said, but all the stuff that's going on around it, everybody's so excited. And like, well, I'm just not, hon. That's just the way it is. And I said, I finally explained to her, when we go to the games, I want you to ask other players' wives, if their husbands are excited about coming. And she did that over the course of time after that. And she came to me one day and finally said, you know what? Those wives say the same thing about their husbands.
Exactly. We had football.
Playing the game, you kind of just, it's not as big a deal.
Yeah. We had, not long ago, we had Football Hall of Famer Marv Levy join us via telephone, actually with George Castle. They had collaborated on a book that had to do with the Chicago Cubs. And it was amazing. We weren't really there to talk much football. He tried to work in a little bit because of obviously George, or not George, Marv being the legend that he is. Not many coaches, win or lose, get to 4 consecutive Super Bowls. But he kind of echoed the same thing. Now, once he retired and stepped away from the game, he went back to his first love, which was being a Chicago Cubs fan. So he really didn't keep up like yourself. He didn't keep up with football at all. And so that's understandable. The wives sometimes don't understand that. But and now tell me what your other passions. I know you at one point you like to hunt and fish. And obviously speaking. So you keep yourself pretty busy, no doubt.
Oh, sure. I enjoyed our son, raising him, and the hunting and fishing. I was an avid golfer until recent years, and so I enjoyed anything outdoors, really.
Now you bring up two before.
Except soccer.
Oh well. Well, I'll tell you, every 4 years that World Cup is amazing what that does. But I get it. It's an acquired taste for some people. I have to bring it up since you brought up golf. Your brother, is it Tom?
Yes.
Tom, for a time, was on the PGA Tour, and I think, if I read correctly, you guys are the only MLB and PGA brother combo to actually, play in those sports. That's pretty good.
That's what we're told.
Yeah.
The fun thing was for me was I got to caddy for him.
Nice.
So I was like a little kid. I was much more excited about being inside the ropes for those golf matches than I was going to a baseball game.
Now, as I started to ask about Fort Pierce, Florida, obviously now you and your brother, and I think you have a sister as well, correct?
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about, I know Fort Pierce, Florida can be hot during those summer months, but tell me a little bit about life back then and how that kind of prepared you in your own thinking back for your life ahead. Good times back in those days?
Sure. I grew up playing sports and excelling in school, and I had great parents that encouraged us kids to do the best we could at everything we did, and so I played multiple sports, and the competition in Florida it's highly competitive in all sports. Golf, baseball, football, basketball. There's just a tremendous amount of athletes come from Florida, so it was challenging, and I think those challenging times, growing up in Florida, make you a better ball player. I mean, I think you see many more athletes coming out of the states like Florida, Texas, California. And certainly it was that way when I was growing up in Florida.
Oh, sure. A warmer climate being, one of the many factors. Sure. Ed Hearn joining us here for the hour on Studio 411. The book Conquering Life's Curves, co-authored with Gene Fournette. Again, forward by George Brett. For a brief time, of course, this Hall of Famer, teammate of Ed Hearn during Ed's time with the Kansas City Royals. And, of course, here we are in the 1986 world champion New York Mets. So, of course, those of you in the Connecticut, New York area, of course, that love the Mets. I was fortunate enough, grew up where despite people say you can't root for two teams, I grew up where I had the Mets and the Yankees right on my TV screen. So you couldn't help but have a little bit of affection for both, and I go back to '69 Mets. So, of course, the good times and struggles along the way. And
sure, well, you're unique. Usually, I found that most New Yorkers like the Chicago people are you're either one for one team or the other. And
well, they say there's a prevailing thought that no, you can't like both. I just, like I said, I think I came along at a time during the waning days of Mickey Mantle where the Mets kind of, you were intrigued by some of their just the way that they would conduct themselves, yet they would still lose. Then they started getting like Seaver and Kuzman. Meanwhile, the Yankees were kind of going the other way. On a good day, if the antenna was good, we'd actually be able to pick up the Red Sox. So I lived in a very good section for multiple, and that was pre-cable. So I was very, very fortunate in that regard. Your dad once said that sometimes you needed to get mad to do your best. Does that still hold true?
I think it did, in my playing days. I was a little bit laid back, and I learned that lesson when I was in Little League, and I was catching it, and our pitcher gave up 2 home runs, and so my dad came out of the dugout. He was coaching, and he walks out to the mound, and I'm expecting to talk to Roger, the pitcher. Instead, he looks at me and goes, "Why are you calling them pitches?" And boy, I just kind of lit up. I think got some tears in my eyes, and I just was spitfiring mad. And so the next inning, I led off, and first pitch, yanked it out of the yard, home run. Next at bat, home run. Next at bat, double off the wall. So I think that was the beginning of me understanding that I needed to play a little more aggressive in my style. I was a little bit too laid back, to really get the most out of myself.
One of the many themes that I got out of the book, of course, early on in the book was it appeared to me that you were quite vocal about giving young kids the roots and foundation through the book that they need to strive and succeed, and that in some cases you thought that maybe kids sometimes didn't have that support. Do you think that that has improved since the book came out originally, that kids, sometimes are better at striving for their goals, whether it be sports or whether it be in life?
I think we're very challenged, and I think we're going the wrong way. Hence, that's one of the reasons I started the Bottom of the Ninth Foundation, because we do a lot of stuff about character, and particularly with youth. We call it the bottom of the ninth because the bottom of the ninth doesn't happen in baseball unless the good team's tied or behind. And we say in America, we're losing the character battle. And I say it's a slippery slope. I really think that we're not the nation we were. And I think it begins with our youth. So hopefully that book is hopefully that's influenced some kids to have, think twice about, because a lot of kids today don't have 2 parents in the home, and a lot of people if there are 2 parents, they're both working. So I think the foundation was laid by my parents was very, very important in my success and my brother and sister's success.
You think that too now in today's era that the advent of social media, the internet, that is further, the cell phones, that is further complicated matters, or do you think that some of that is useful if used correctly?
Well, I believe some of it is useful, but I think a great majority of it is detrimental. You just don't, if you're riding around the community, how many times do you see kids out playing catch anymore? Or throwing a football. It's just, it's almost just surprising when you see kids out doing stuff, playing sports, other than the organized sports. And I think we're raising a current generation of kids that are going to be without some of the many skills that we had, just being outdoors playing and having a good time.
Sure. Imagination for one of many. That's
surely.
I'm saying that's my bone to pick, but that's all I'll say on that subject. Speaking of growing up, we've got a shot that was not taken too long ago about you and one of your childhood idols, Johnny Bench. We can pull that up. Growing up, you were a big football Bob Greasy fan. Those are Miami Dolphin quarterback, and also the emu man himself these days on TV, Johnny Bench, Hall of Fame catcher with the Cincinnati Reds. So again, you picked a couple. Mine was Mantle, but you picked a couple of good ones in those 2 gentlemen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great for kids to pick people to imitate and watch and learn from. Unfortunately, in our society today, there's a lot less good role models in our sports world as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
And I shudder to think some of the role models that some of the kids are looking at today and following their lead. But, when you talk about the two guys that I emulated and wanted to be like, I really wanted to be an NFL quarterback. And that was my real dream. And Bob Greasy of the Dolphins was kind of my man because we grew up in South Florida, and I actually went to a couple summer camps of his and got to know him a little bit. And when I went to high school, our high school football program was not fit for my style of quarterbacking. I was a drop back passing type quarterback, kind of more of a designed for a pro offense. And our high school was more of an option oriented offense, and that wasn't to my liking. So my quarterbacking skills weren't developed at that level. So hence I turned to baseball as because that's where it appeared that I had the most opportunity.
And also, didn't you at one point have to go to a high school where, again, you were having a tough time kind of cracking the lineup as far as quarterback?
Yes, that was the school where I went, Fort Pierce Central. It was a little bit challenging there. It was.
No, enough said.
There were some racial issues involved.
Okay.
In the situation, and unfortunately, it was kind of reverse racism.
Gotcha.
I was the first white quarterback in the history of my school. First white guy to score a touchdown, and the black community wasn't real excited about me being a quarterback. And I believe that there was fear. Coaches feared the community and what they might do when I quarterback. I actually had 2 death threats prior to my first games as a quarterback.
Wow, amazing.
So it wasn't ideal conditions, but baseball was my destiny, and so no big deal.
I hear you. Ed Hearn joining us for the hour here on Studio 411. The book forward by George Brett, Conquering Life's Curves, Baseball Battles, and Beyond. I just wanted to also mention that, of course, you can tell by Ed speaking with us today that, again, a very well-spoken gentleman. Pleasure to have him here. Ed is the first current or former professional athlete to have received the coveted CSP designation. That stands for Certified Speaking Professional. I certainly don't have that, but from the National Speakers Association, and that's quite an honor. So congratulations, and I can tell you are, and also you were maybe still do. I don't know. For a time you were working after your baseball career in between. The health issues, you were working for a health insurance company, so of course not a life insurance company, I should say.
Yeah.
So again, I'm sure that, knowing Mr. Ziegler and all, I can see that this was your destiny right here. That speaking with people, and I've seen some of your speeches again on the internet, and again just mesmerizing is the word that comes to mind. You do a fantastic job, and I'm sure you've been told that, but it never hurts to hear it again. So.
No, that's right. I appreciate your compliments, and it's just I feel like I've been given a little bit of gift of gab, and I enjoy talking with people, and I enjoy talking to people, because I think that our world needs more positive role models, and that's what I like to think that I am, and I strive to be anyway.
Absolutely. Real quick, amongst your football escapades there, you at one point as a youth, you were in, must have been near the beginning of this, because I thought this program maybe started in the 70s, the NFL punt, pass, and kick competition. I've never met anybody that was in that. That must have been something to participate in those.
Punt, pass, and kick was I think, a very important program in my life. I think the earliest age you could compete in it was 7 years old, maybe. And my dad took me when I was 6 to watch the competition. And he said, "Would you like to do this?" I said, "Yeah, it looks fun." And he said, "Well, if you're going to do it, we're going to practice." And I said, "Okay." Well, my dad pushed me in my younger days, and he taught me what work ethic was about. And in that program, I experienced success for the first time in my life and what it was all about. And I learned to equate the work ethic with success. And in the pump, ass, and kick program, I had great success. Never won at the national level, but all the way up through regionals and stuff like that. But it was a great competition that helped me learn a very important part of what I consider to be my success, and that's the work ethic that I had.
And I always felt when I would watch that, during half times or, during sometimes they even have the finalists during playoff games or whatever. But to me, it was just, you could see a very big character building with these young men and later women, young girls as well, that would participate in that. And that's the thing that always stuck with me. So who knows? I might have seen you at a halftime of a game and didn't realize it. Didn't realize this guy is going to grow up to be, 6 foot something and then taking hits, We talked about, too, when you were playing football, and I'm reminded that your two things, your shoulder hits that you sustained when you played football, those in their own way helped later on, not in a good way, but some of your injuries that curtailed your MLB career as well. Also now in your family, correct me if I'm wrong, like a hereditary disease or illness that, again, some of that too with your mom and maybe one of your siblings as well, that also contributed to some of your health issues?
Yes, one of the condition you're referring to, one of the three initial health issues that I contracted and was found after my playing days. It's called hypogamma-globulin anemia, and it's a part of the immune system that doesn't produce gamma globulin, and that's part of your defense system. It also provides energy for you. I was diagnosed with this as a kid and used to take big IV infusions when I was young, and then they thought I outgrew it. But then when my career ended, they realized that, no, maybe I didn't. And so I have to take an IV treatment once a month, about $8,000 or $10,000 a shot. And I'll do that the rest of my life just to keep me healthy and not getting infections and stuff of that nature.
Now, would that be something that today with more modern medicine, that those things are more accurately diagnosed and perhaps the treatments are a little better now to help stave off what would happen as an adult?
Yes, I wonder, I have thought that many times, and wondering if, modern medicine today would have helped me to be able to be treated better when I was younger. I believe that I had that condition while I was playing professional sports. And that condition drove my brother out of playing PGA golf because he couldn't keep up with, he'd get fatigued easy. He would get a cold that would, for most people, would last 3 or 4 days. His would last 3 or 4 weeks. And just that edge of fitness and vitality that was taken from him drove him out of the game. And I often wonder if modern medicine may have helped me to feel better during my playing days.
Oh, sure. I mean, sure. What was known or done, let's say even in the 70s or even late 60s, whatever, 80s. I mean, again, even something simple as a meniscus tear. Back in the day, you'd be out of commission for 6 to 8 months. Now you're out 5-6 weeks, and players as well as normal folks like you and I now are back at work in no time. But just as one example, not to mention something certainly more serious on those levels than just a knee tear, for sure. Drafted by the Phillies in 1978, passed up a chance to go to West Point Academy. I'm going to say you probably don't look back and say, oh, I regret that, because I don't know, any number of reasons. One, I believe very much in the It's a Wonderful Life theory. If one thing changes in your life, one left turn instead of a right, you and I wouldn't be speaking here. You and I might not be alive. Whatever the case, there's a lot of doors that would have been changed as a result of one big move, such as going to West Point.
Yes, I don't look back at that and wish I had done that. I had opportunities at 3 of the Ivy League schools as well, and you can always look back at life and second guess yourself. But I choose to face life with the philosophy of living so that you never have to look yourself in the mirror and go, if only I had done this, or if only I hadn't done that.
Absolutely.
And so I try not to live in the rearview mirror of life. I think those were great opportunities that just weren't for me at the time, and I don't have any regrets of passing those up.
Tell me a little bit about a gentleman that had a big impact, or so I got out of the book, a guy named, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing, Godfrey Smith. Tell me a little bit about him and your interactions with him those many years ago.
Yeah, Godfrey Smith was a chapel leader with in the Hampton, Norfolk area, and I played 2 or 3 years there, and Godfrey was a man. I should explain what chapel is. Chapel is an opportunity for guys to have some faith in their life on Sundays, because you can't go to church because you're playing baseball. And baseball chapel was a program where a guy like Godfrey Smith, he was the local chapel leader, would come in from the community and provide a 20-minute little service of faith-based service. And Godfrey was a guy that I just connected with, as we all connect with different people for different reasons. And Godfrey had a young family, and I think I enjoyed hanging around his family. And he was a sailor. He taught me to sail, and he was a guy that just was one of those people along life's path that really helped me to grow.
Here's a quote from the book by Ed Hearn, Conquering Life's Curves, Baseball Battles and Beyond. Quote, selfishness gets us nowhere. When we serve others, the rewards are unlimited, unquote. And I bet you he might have learned that from Godfrey Smith, if not a few other people as well.
Surely.
Tell me, on the other side of the coin, what's this I hear about Mike Scott and scuffing up baseballs? I remember that series, the '86 NLCS Championship Series. Those games were, in some ways, almost better than the World Series. And he used to own the Mets, and then I read this shocking tale. Just shed a little light. How do we know that he was scuffing up the balls?
Well, to bring your viewers up to date, the Houston Astros won the Western Division, and we won the Eastern Division, and we were in the playoffs to see who went to the World Series. Well, Mike Scott was a pitcher for the Houston Astros, and he did, like you said, he had our number, and but he had a certain pitch that moved like no pitch we'd ever seen before. And as a matter of fact, in the series when we were playing them, he pitched the first and third game. And then if we hadn't won Game 6, we would have faced him again in Game 7, and we would have never went to the World Series. He was in our mind, if not physically with the pitch, he was in our mentally, in our minds, and there's no way we would beat him. But in the playoff game at home in New York, I decided to start looking at the baseballs that were thrown out of the game, and so I was the one that found the scuff mark that he was making on the baseball in the same spot above the commissioner's logo. It was round, about the size of between a quarter and $1/2, and he would use that to make the ball move just unbelievably. He would grip it like a split finger fastball, but when you scuff a ball, it creates havoc on the pitch, and it would literally just drop off a table. And so we collected those balls during that game and sent them to the commissioner's office. But of course, commissioners aren't going to act on something like that big a deal in time. But I've got a sanitary sock with about 6 or 8 of those balls that Mike scuffed up. And my brother called me and he said, I'm watching on TV and I know how he's doing it. He takes his glove off and he pretends like he's rubbing up the ball like you would normally, but he doesn't rotate the ball in his hand. He keeps it still in one hand and grinds that ball into his left hand. So he's got something in the palm of his hand on his glove side.
Oh, I thought maybe it was like a belt buckle, because I know, some of the Perry boys or the Negro boys, sometimes they were known for, they would have like the belt loop or whatever would be a little filed down, so that's. But I like how you said he did it right above the commissioner. Wasn't Bowie Kuhn the commissioner back then? I think.
Boy, you tested my memory.
Yeah.
Might have been Peter Uber.
Oh no, Uberoth. Oh, you're right. You're right. So maybe he just didn't like Uberoth. I don't know.
He didn't care. He was making that ball move like nobody else we'd ever seen. And it was funny. Major League Baseball went to Japan. It took like an all-star team to play some exhibition games that winter, and our catcher Gary Carter was part of that team, and so was Mike Scott. Well, Mike got lit up in Japan because he couldn't cheat and scuff the ball because Gary was catching it.
There you go, yeah.
So it was just another twist along life's path there.
I'm trying to think, was it Alan Ashby? Who was the catcher for the Astros back in those days?
I believe it was Alan.
Yeah, so then we got to talk to Alan and get the lowdown, because you're never going to get...
We had guys that cheated too, Larry, so it's not that big a deal.
You're never going to get a straight answer from those guys, let me tell you. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, so again, Ed Hearn goes to the World Series. I guess, if I understood correctly, because you were the backup to Gary, there was no third catcher. So did you even see any action during the series?
No, I knew that going in. It was the first year that they had reduced the roster from 25 men to 24.
Right.
And so the managers, everybody was freaking out about not having a third catcher. So I was kind of told right up front early on that, if we use you, it's going to be in a real emergency.
Sure.
And because for your viewers' information, if I had gone to the game and then Gary had gotten hurt or I had gotten hurt, we would be without a catcher.
Yeah.
And then that catcher's not a position that you can just throw anybody into.
I'm going to say, and I might be wrong on this, but memory serves, was Howard Johnson your emergency catcher?
It was either him or Kevin Mitchell.
Kevin Mitchell? Oh, no, I can't see. Wow, okay, no, okay. But see, Kevin wasn't around as long as Howard. I think later on, Howard was kind of the in case something freaky happened. Interesting,
right.
Interesting, yeah.
Might have been.
Yeah, that's right, because you certainly weren't going to put a pitcher out there doing that, that's for sure. It still hasn't happened today. Anyway, so now they win the ring. Ed makes, a nice little piece of change hanging around New York, collecting some appearance fees. Everything's good. He meets his wife-to-be, and then all of a sudden gets a phone call in, I believe it was December or January of '87, traded to the Royals. So a little bit of a downer for sure.
Well, it was actually spring training. It was the last 5 days left in spring training of '87.
Wow.
So it would have been late in March. And there have been rumors about the Royals and a young catcher to handle their pitching staff that just won the World Series in '85. And my name was in the mix, but nothing happened until 5 days left in spring training. And then I get the call, and it wasn't terrible disappointed. It was kind of a double-edged sword, because one aspect I was a little disappointed to be leaving the Mets, because I felt the Mets had so much talent that I might be missing out on a couple rings over the next 3 or 4 years. But on the other hand, I was going to Kansas City to be the starting catcher, and so that's kind of what you play the game for, is
Sure.
to be in there every day, and that's how you establish yourself. So on the other hand, that was a positive thing, and I was looking forward to going to Kansas City, especially with the pitching staff they had as well.
Certainly, because again, you until obviously your illnesses perhaps took much more attention away from following the game. But getting David Cohen and then getting a Kevin McReynolds and a few other pieces, even though they gave up a few key people as well. The Mets, again, there are people, and you stay in touch with the organization to some degree, there are people that felt that not only in '88, but beyond that they should have won at least a couple of more championships. That's how good of a nucleus they had.
Very much so. They had a lot of talent, but they also had some characters that I believe took away from a winning atmosphere.
This is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any fingers here.
No. Oh yeah. No, I got the gist from the book, but I'm going to save that for when we have you back on with a couple of either ex-teammates or other folks that I think would make for a great forum on talking about characters for sure. You get injured, as you said, when you went to the Royals early on, and then of course you know. You went through a rehab a couple of years trying to rehab your shoulder and everything else. And then literally then by 1991, you know, the beginning of a tough stretch for you. You leave baseball as a player after trying to latch on with Cleveland, and that didn't happen. And then in July of that same year, you're told that your kidneys, as you had mentioned earlier, at the age of 31, that your kidneys are failing. Again, I can't even fathom, you know, what your reaction. You must have been in total denial.
Yes, I was told that my kidneys were failing. That's when I was diagnosed with that hypogammaglobulin anemia. And I was also told I had severe sleep apnea. I was got to sleep with a breathing machine every night. And so those three core issues, they diagnosed within about 10 days of each other. And this was just as I was making a transition into the real world with, you know, in the insurance business. And, you know, it's one thing to go from a normal person to losing your health. They say if you got your health, you know, be thankful. Well, I lost my health, but what happened was people would ask me many times after that, you know, well, do you feel normal? And I would say, man, I haven't felt normal since I was about 10 years old. I was always above the grid, and I went from above the grid to off the grid bad, and so it was a huge. I mean, the higher you climb in life, the steeper the fall. And I took a big fall in life, and it was challenging. And to make matters worse, I take a lot of pills today to keep from rejecting the kidney, and for other issues. And I was put on those medications back there in '92 after my first transplant, and they have a lot of side effects, and it just messes with your whole life. So it was a very challenging time, to say the least.
Absolutely. Ed Hearn joining us for the hour here on Studio 411. The book, Conquering Life's Curves, Baseball Battles and Beyond. For more information, www.bottomoftheninth, that's 9th.org, and also edhearn.com. The book published by Bottom of the Ninth, already in multiple editions, with a foreword by George Brett. And just to kind of encapsulate so that to latch on to what Ed was saying, today after 3 kidney transplants, about with cancer, radiation treatments, years of dialysis, the aid of a breathing machine as a result of some serious sleep apnea, as much as $8,000 in IV treatments each month, 20 to 50 pills a day. To say that Ed has had a comeback to live a life that's truly an inspiration would be an understatement. So just kind of to capsulize that so that, you know, people don't say, well, you know, exactly how bad was it? Well, between Ed's words and that paragraph right there, I think we've crystallized that. Back in '92, then you had a kidney match, which was amazing. Now, obviously, that would have been the first of the 3, but that was remarkable for its time because that was literally within, what, a couple of weeks of you going on the list?
Yes, it was only 3 weeks. As a matter of fact, I had been on a business trip to Denver. Actually, that's where I first heard Zig Ziglar speak. And I was home by myself. My wife was at one of the lady parties for a wedding, and I was there alone. The phone rang, and they had told me it would be, you know, a year and a half, 2 years before I would get a kidney off the donor list. And when the phone rang, I answered it, and this woman said, Ed, and I said, yes, ma'am. She said, how would you like a kidney? And it caught me by surprise, and I think, okay, somebody's pranking on me here. So I said, yeah, I'd love to have one. Yeah, can you deliver? And I'd like with pepperoni and mushroom to go. Yes, thank you. And the lady stopped, and I think I took the wind out of her sails for a little bit. And she said, Mr. Hearn, this is so-and-so. She repeated her introduction, and we do have a possible match for you. And I said, well, how can this be? It's only been a few weeks. She said, these things happen. Sometimes it's a longer wait, sometimes it's a shorter wait. And so I got serious after that. But when I initially got the call, I was kind of goofing around with her, and I was just very blessed to have that first transplant so quickly.
See, what the viewer doesn't know is, Ed gave me the same spiel when I contacted him. But he didn't realize that I liked that kind of pizza. So then he was on the hook. So he didn't have a choice. In the remaining moments we have, I just wanted to touch base. Tell the viewers, sum up again the importance regarding organ donation.
Yeah, it's just. We don't need our organs in heaven. I mean, good grief. All it takes is sign an organ donor card. You can make it known on your driver's license. We just have so many people in need of organs, and we can't take them with us when we're gone. And so I just encourage everybody to take a look and sign up to be an organ donor, and make it known to your family as well. That if something were to happen, that you'd like to be an organ donor. It's just one person can make a difference in like 30 different lives between skin and eyes. It's just amazing the impact one person who signs a donor card can have.
Oh, especially in today's modern medicine, as we talked about, so much more can be done. I mean, you even have, facial transplants. I mean, it's mind-boggling from certainly the time of your initial health issues, what has improved. September of '93, now you had run into people such as Zig Ziglar and a couple of other people that have kind of given you direction, perhaps leading you to becoming a speaker. But in September of '93, you got a call about being a guest speaker. Talk a little bit about how that impacted you.
Well, a good friend of mine, former Chiefs player Dave Lindstrom, called and asked me to come to his Rotary Club, and he was desperate because the meeting was the next day, and he was the one who got speakers for the club that year, and his speaker bailed on him. So he was really desperate, and I was kind of not feeling real well, and I tried to tell him no. But Dave's a bigger guy than me, and he twisted my arm on the phone. And I said, okay, man, I'll go. So I went and just did, talked for 20 minutes just about my life. I was never trained I did a lot of talks with, drug talks when I was playing ball in schools, things like that. I was always involved with communities. But when I got through, the president of the club, who happened to own the Speakers Bureau, came up to me and said, man, you got a great story for an old jockey and tell it well, and corporate America pays people like you to speak to their organizations at meetings and all. And I thanked him and said I appreciate it, but I'm not interested. Timing wasn't right. And so 6 months later, though, I called him back and said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about what you said. And that's how it started. It was just meant to be.
Absolutely, yeah. It's amazing how people weave in and out of our lives. Sometimes we don't see it, and sometimes we miss opportunities, which in some cases you never realize that you missed it. But it does happen. In this case, for the good. And the remaining minutes we have with Ed Hearn, again, 1986 New York Met world champion, Kansas City Royals, started out in the Phillies organization, talking about a wonderful book, Conquering Life's Curves, Baseball, Battles, and Beyond. Again, much more about non-baseball stuff, but again, it all ties in, as you would certainly understand by reading this book as I did. It's great. August of '94, your son Cody is born. Jump ahead now to the last few years. Your son has had some health issues that now he has overcome. How's he doing?
He's stable. He was diagnosed with Burkitt's lymphoma stage 3 when he was 17, and he battled that, and the chemo really had a big impact on him, and it knocked him off his feet, and he's stable right now, and he's trying to get his feet underneath him still. But when he was born, I was really still recovering myself from all the health issues. And as I spoke earlier, that was one of the reasons that I wrote the book, was because of Cody and because of my health and not knowing how long I was going to be around. As it's turned out, the book has been so well received over the years. Of course, it has a lot of years on it right now, but it's an evergreen story. It's one that, it doesn't have the last 15 years of my life in it, but it has up through a very important part of my life, and it's like a bow wrapped around where I first began speaking, and I'm really grateful that I was inspired to do that. That along with the speaking, that gentleman hadn't been there at that meeting. Dave didn't ask me to come to the Rotary Club and speak that day. Who knows what I would have been doing? But I know this. I definitely probably wouldn't be impacting people's lives like I've been able to do through the speaking and through the book.
Absolutely. Two people I just want to touch on. Your son is named Cody Carter Hearn. For those who didn't draw on the hypotenuse there with the Carter, named after your battery mate, fellow teammate, Gary Carter. You're, I think, the first one that I've had contact with who played with, knew Gary Carter. Tell us in about a minute about your late teammate who passed away of brain cancer several years back. Give me a little synopsis or story about the great Gary Carter.
Gary was obviously a great baseball player, Hall of Famer, but more importantly, he was a Hall of Famer in the game of life. He's a great family man. He played the game hard, and he was good with his people around him. He wasn't selfish. He gave a lot of himself. He was a great mentor to me, and I respect him so much that, as you mentioned, we did name our son after him, Cody Carter Hearn. Definitely a guy that, I hope that other people would say that about me someday. That's how much I think of Gary.
Absolutely. And real quick, we've got only about a minute. Mickey Mantle died of liver cancer. Of course, big idol of mine, died in '95 at age 63. We all know about Mickey's good and bad, but again, you got to know him just a little bit when your son was first born. He had a chance to maybe redeem his life a little bit towards the end. Quite a story there.
Yes, it was. He was a crazy, wild and crazy fella, and unbelievably great baseball player. But like you said, he did redeem himself late in life. Even on his deathbed, he made some decisions that were truly amazing. And to see a guy go from that lifestyle to making such great decisions was a real neat thing to watch.
Absolutely. Well, again, the hour has flown by, and again, as I said at the beginning, we're going to talk a lot of baseball because this story is one for the ages. Again, I can't thank Ed enough for making time in his busy schedule to join us today. We certainly plan on having Ed if he'd like to join us with a couple of other people I've got in mind, some maybe old teammates or old competitors, and then we'll really have the fur fly and more stories about scuffing and God knows what. But the book, Conquering Life's Curves, Baseball, Battles, and Beyond, published by Bottom of the Ninth. For more information, edhearn.com, as well as bottomoftheninth.org. Ed, words fail me. You are a true inspiration. You've moved me. I'm sure you are moving the listeners. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
My pleasure, and continued success with your program, Larry. You're making a difference.
Thank you. Hang tight there. We thank you for joining us here on this episode of Studio 411. Larry DeSilva's my name. We look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.